Hey, it's Buck at Bacon Trees. Thanks for stopping by. Just doing a video in response to a comment I got on a video I did back in 2016 about how to mix a show in a nutshell. It's like a couple of minutes long, and I got this comment. Anyways, I've got my I've got my B cam rolling over here, and just to show you quickly my setup I have with my computer, referencing the actual thing in question. I got a dog food container. Because my dog she's always watching me. Rosie. See, she's always watching what I do. She's like, what are you doing with those videos? Got my camera up here with a Kleenex as a diffuser. Interesting. Anyway, enough about that. I'm going to go back to the comment I got. Okay, I'll shut that. Oh, I'm going to use my dog clicker to sync up my cameras. So when I see that transient on both cameras, I know they're in sync. Anyway, so I'm going to turn this one off and go back to the question I got. Okay, not the question, the comment. It says, and this is from Don F., and this is a few hours ago actually. I went out and I saw it before I went out to give an exam for a class, and then I'm back now, so I wanted to make this video. I think whatever process you use to get a good mix in the front of house and the monitor system is the way to go. I don't think there's any one method. This was simply just a video to, if people didn't know how to have a mix strategy, this is one possible strategy. In all fairness, Don F., I didn't mention anything about the gain structure in this video. I have other videos with gain structure and stuff like that. But this is a typical mix. This mix, this type of mix, this approach to mixing, worked for me for many years, and I found a way that always worked for me. I'll get more into what Don said about my particular approach. But I think it's interesting to start a conversation, a discussion about this, maybe a debate. I don't mind that. I don't profess to say, like, mine is the only way of doing things. There's a few different ways of doing it. I'm just trying to put YouTube videos out there to help people who might need an approach and don't know how to approach it, right? Because I had said to students over years that 10 different sound people are going to have 10 different opinions. But in the end, I always go back to the 4 questions. Is it loud enough? Can everybody hear? Can everybody understand? And will it feed back? I've done videos on that, so I'm not going to do that right now. Let me just get right to the comment. Okay, get the mix started with the master at 0 and the vocal fader set to 0. Question mark, question mark, question mark. You now have nowhere to go with it but down in caps. I can guarantee you that the band will be turning up their amps and playing harder throughout the night. Okay, well, I actually communicate with the bands, and most times, not always, most times I'm successful in getting them to do what I want. Meaning, if you have to turn up or down, let me know. I need to approach it in a different, I need to help you approach this in a way that the audience is going to appreciate the mix, have a good time being at the show. So if the band does turn up and they didn't tell me, or we didn't have this discussion, I wasn't very proactive, and it's my fault. Okay, so guarantee you that the band will be turning up their amps. Not always. No, if I talk to the bands, they don't always turn up without asking me. Sometimes that's happened. They always do. They don't. I'm sorry. They haven't always done that in my experience. So I'm going to say I don't agree with that. Okay, with no headroom available, your vocals will be buried when that happens. If that happens. So I've rarely had problems with that. One particular band, Death from Above, 1979, they wouldn't listen, and they just turned up and they drowned out their own vocals, and I warned them it was going to happen. But I warned them during sound checks. So yeah, that can happen. Most of my mixes over time, since I would say when I started getting used to live mixing from 1996 to 1998, from 1998 and onwards, I started to understand and get it, and most of my mixes, you could hear everything in the mix because I go for a vocal-based approach. So I make sure the vocals are the loudest thing. That's why I set the vocals first. I set the master to 0, and I set the vocals when I'm setting up, which I didn't explain in the video, to +5. Bring out the feedback if there's feedback. Take it down to 0 and start the show at 0. I can go up +5 and I can go down to -5 or -10 if I really need to, which I rarely need to do that. So I've got 5 dB of headroom reserved in the way I set up. I have said that in other videos, and I didn't say that in this video, so maybe that's where some confusion is done. If maybe you can respond. I'd like to have a discussion. Okay. The best bet is to start with the mains and the vocals at -10. Well, good. If that works for you, do it. If other people watching this, if they try that approach and it works for them, do it. Whatever approach works for you, just do it. There's not one way. I don't do that, and I still have very successful mixes, so no problem there. Then when the stage volume rises during the night, you will have the room to keep the vocals on top. You will have the room to keep the vocals on top. Oh, if you start out at -10, I see. Okay, that works. I've actually tried a very, very similar approach, not that exact approach, but I've tried similar things like that before, and I didn't get the results I was wanting, so I developed my own approach. In most cases, the vocals and mains will be as hot as you can get them, and all the instruments will be half what you started with by the end of the show. Your logic is exactly why I hate going to clubs. Sorry. By the halfway point, the vocalists might as well head back to the dressing room. Nobody can hear them anymore anyway. Well, I haven't had that experience in most cases. I would say I'd say 80 to 90% of the cases, let's say 85% of the cases, I've not had that problem. When an artist doesn't listen to me, and I have a video about this too, but when an artist doesn't listen to me to get the results that we both want, then yeah, that's going to happen, and I really can't do anything about it. So in most cases, I'm successful in the vocal-based approach. So my logic is exactly why he hates going to clubs. Well, you haven't heard a show I mixed, so you might have a different opinion. But then again, if you happen to be in Toronto at any time between 1996 and 2013, when I was actually doing a lot of my mixing, you wouldn't have seen me anyway, because I always dress in dark colors. I don't have a light over the board, and I hide in the dark very low when I'm mixing, so nobody notices I'm mixing. And when people look around, they go, "Where is this? Is there a sound person here?" That was my thing. I just hid in the darkness. I didn't want anyone to know there was somebody behind the wheel. So, and if there was a problem, I would address it. I would go up to the stage and I would address it with the band and say, "Hey, you guys, I noticed you turned up there in that last song. Do you mind just turning down a bit?" I don't do it from the board through the talkback system, through the monitors. I tell them face to face. I look at them and I say, "Listen, I noticed you turned up and now the mix is kind of off and we can't hear the vocals. Can you help me by just turning down a bit? And maybe the other guitar player can turn down a bit." Because if there's two guitar players in a band, and I've had this happen, one of them turns up because they're like, "Oh, darn, I'm not loud enough." Well, we did a sound check and everything was fine, but now everything's different. The condition changed, the room is full of people, etc., etc. So the other guitar player goes, "Well, if you're turning up, I'm turning up." And then I'm like, "Oh, here we go," right? So by having the conversation ahead of time with the artists, I rarely run into that problem. And as long as they're comfortable on stage, and believe me, when I play, and I played many, many shows myself, when I'm on that side, on the stage, I need to be comfortable. So I completely understand why stage volume is important, because the artist has to be comfortable on stage, otherwise they're not going to perform at their best. And I got to make sure the front of house mix is not too loud. If I see people doing this, there's a problem. If people are doing this and looking at me, there's a problem. If people are going, "Hey, it's too loud, can you turn it down?" there's a problem. So I'm probably one of the quietest mixers I'll say in North America, but I can't make that claim. I'm one of the quietest live sound mixers in Toronto. In fact, I've been to many festivals, played many festivals, been to many shows, mixed lots of shows with other people too, mixing as well. And there's just so many people who are just pummeling the public with loud sound. We don't need it to be painful for people to enjoy loud music. It's got to be comfortable. If some people, I've said this before, I forget when, but if some people say, "Well, if it's too loud, you're too old," or "Turn it up because they're drunk," I'm sorry, I can't do that. I want to make everybody, well, you can't make everybody happy, number one, let's just say that, but I want to make as many people comfortable as possible. I want the artist on stage to shine and people to go. I don't want people to say, "Oh, who's mixing the show?" I want them to forget about who's mixing the show. I want them to enjoy the artist. If the artist wasn't on stage, I wouldn't be hired to mix the show. So I am serving the artist. The artist is my customer. Or I could be their customer, whichever way you look at it. But if they're not there, I'm not there. So I don't just show up to a club or a concert and set up a mixing board and a PA system with no artist on stage, right? So we have to make the artist have a great show. If they cooperate, even better. Sometimes artists don't cooperate. They'll just ignore you, and then things sound terrible, right? And and you can't do much about it except get paid and just say, well, that's one for the books. It didn't work this show, but it's worked before in the past. I don't know. Like, there's no one way of doing it. I've said that before. There's many different approaches. I think the best thing is I don't want 100% of people who are wanting to get into live sound to listen to me, because that's just not the way it works in life. But if somebody's looking at YouTube videos and they're looking at how to mix a show, whatever, what's the best strategy? There are no best strategies. There's just a whole bunch of strategies that work because there's various different ways of approaching it. Hey, if you made it this far into the video, I'm giving you a free download. Cheers. So my best advice to anybody who's getting into mixing live sound is, like, if you're gonna watch YouTube videos, which is great. I learn other stuff that I don't know about on YouTube. I think it's amazing. But if I can help in any way, my best advice would be to watch as many different approaches as possible. Try them all out and see which ones work for you. Use common sense and judgment. If several different people who don't know each other keep repeating the same thing about like something like gain structure or EQ, like subtractive EQ and live sound, which makes sense, then you're like, okay, maybe there's something to this. If like 5 of these people who said they had all this experience are saying that, then there must be something to it. So in that case, take away as many takeaways as possible, try them out yourself, see if they work for you, and find your strategy. Maybe you're going to come up with a completely different strategy and revolutionize the industry by going, this is how you do it. You might come up with something completely different, and I might go, that totally makes sense. Oh wow, I learned something today. I watch other people's live sound videos too, because I don't know everything. I just know what I know from my own experience. And yeah, sure, it's been over 20 years, but I haven't tried everything in the book. I've always had the approach of trying new things when I can, but making sure the mix doesn't fall apart. So making it sound good and then sustaining that and making sure it doesn't fall apart. Part of the problem is communication. I don't know if Don has, if you're mixing, you communicate with the artist every time, like fully communicate, full disclosure about the mix and talk them into certain things. I don't know if that happens, but I do. I always talk to them. I joke around with them. I say, listen, I just really want to make things sound great tonight because it's not about me. It's about you guys sounding great. Okay, and I'm hired to do a job. And, I might want to get other work out of it. So if people do think it's amazing and they do come up to me and say, hey, you made it sound great. I'm like, I always say, you know what? The artist listened to me. We both made it sound great. So I work with them as a team, basically. I'm not autonomous. I'm working with them to make them sound good. I'm working for them to make them sound good. And then we get along. We have a good rapport. And I try the best I can. And again, this is not a 100% thing because it's the entertainment industry. There's a lot of big egos out there, so you can't tame all these egos. If you're not rude and mean, most people will listen to you. Most people will respond to you if you're not like, if you're humble, if you don't have a big head yourself, and if you don't command things. Like when my band used to tour and play a lot of shows, there's one particular place in Toronto we played, the warehouse, or not cathedral, warehouse down on the lakeshore at Jarvis. And one guy shouted at me, turn it down. And I'm like, okay, all right. That's not very nice. You could actually explain things. But it's like, dude, if I wasn't up on stage, you wouldn't be working today. So I don't know how much you're getting paid, but you wouldn't be getting that. Oh, well, maybe there would be another artist instead. I can't just say that it was all about us. We were on a multi-act show, but without the artist on stage, you're out of work. So let's just try our best to work together. Whatever approach in the mixing strategy works. When it's a decent level, when people aren't cringing, when people can hear every word, I always keep the vocals loudest and clearest with lots of headroom and mix around it so the vocals never get lost, as much as that's possible. And like I said, I've had very good success at that. So, I don't know. I enjoy these comments because I can't ever assume that I'm going to get 100% thumbs up. There's always going to be thumbs down, and there's always going to be people who have different opinions, and that's what it's about. It's opinions. At the end of the day, I hate that cliche, but at the end of the day, is it a good mix? Are people having a good time? And you got to examine, hey, if it's not a good mix, and people aren't having a good time, and it's just too loud or something like that, or the band is too loud, whatever, we got to figure out why that is and not make it happen the next time. So what can I say that except that everybody has their own way of doing things. And I'm just trying to share whatever knowledge I have. And again, I don't know everything. I just have the knowledge that I have about it. That's why I'm making these videos. And if anything I said right now could help anybody, or if there's any other discussion, please let me know. I love to discuss these things. All right, cheers. Please like and subscribe. And there's more videos to follow. I'm shooting a whole bunch of them today because they've been on my plate for a while. It's been a very busy 2019, and now 2020 is the year of focus. So thumbs up. Godspeed. Cheers for now.